Happy Monday, scholars. Welcome back from the weekend. Today we are going to continue our unit on the judicial branch in Georgia. Today's objective is scholars will be able to explain the difference between civil and criminal law. So we're going to begin today's lesson about describing the two types of laws. Trial courts oversee cases dealing with the two types of law, and those two types of law, once again, are criminal law and civil law. Criminal law deals with actions that harm people and society. So, for an example, murder, robbery, rape, a DUI, which means driving under the influence, these are actions that harm people in our society. Civil law, on the other hand, it handles private disputes where one person or a group says that another person or a group has somehow done them wrong. So, for an example, if parents are getting divorced, contracts, property ownership, injuries, someone was hit by a car, or a contractor was doing work on someone's house and they did not fulfill the actual job. That's an example of a civil law. Criminal law is a criminal case that's introduced by the government who claims that a person or group has committed a crime. The government's prosecuting attorney seeks to convince the judge or jury that the defendant, and that's the person who is being accused, has both committed a crime and wanted to commit that crime. The defendant has a right to testify to defend himself or herself. If the defendant is found guilty of breaking the law, he or she can be punished by being put in jail or made to pay a fine or both. Criminal law defines two classes of crimes. Crimes for which the punishment is less than a year in jail are called misdemeanors. So if you commit a crime and your time for being served in jail is less than a year, that is known as a misdemeanor. However, crimes with punishments of 1 year or more in jail are more serious and are called felonies. So one particular consequence of those individuals who have committed felonies, when they do become released from prison, they are not able to vote. So that's actually one consequence of becoming a felon, that you aren't able to actually vote. And we learned that when we talked about the voting requirements. Guilt is harder to prove in a criminal case because the prosecutor must prove that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And I'm sure if you watch Law and Order, SVU, or Criminal Minds, or any of those law shows, you always hear that phrase that it's the prosecutor's job to prove that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil law, on the other hand, is a civil case that is introduced by a private party known as a plaintiff, and they're seeking monetary damages. The plaintiff brings their complaint to the court's attention, and they try to convince either a judge or a jury that their complaint has a real basis. The defendant may be forced to testify, which means they have to give their accounts or their perspective of what happened. If the plaintiff proves guilt of the other party by a preponderance of evidence, then the defendant, may have to pay money to the plaintiff. Most civil cases are resolved out of court, and people found guilty in civil cases never have to go to jail. So if you've ever watched like Judge Judy or Judge Joe Brown or Judge Mathis, these are examples of civil law cases because they're bringing their complaint to the court or to the judge, and they are seeking some sort of monetary payment for what they have been through. Now, if you look at your presentation for today, I am going to quickly go through it so you know what is expected of you for each slide. So on this first slide here, you are going to annotate it and click on the image. This slide reads, the judicial branch is responsible for administering justice in both civil and criminal cases. Civil law involves a system of laws concerning relationships between individuals. When someone experiences a civil wrong, it is referred to as a tort. Criminal law involves a system of laws that are created to protect society from someone who has committed a crime. Crimes are more serious offenses. Criminal cases can receive more extensive punishment due to their seriousness. So in some criminal cases, a person who is brought to trial, they may have to pay monetary damages, but they also might have to serve prison time as well. So now you're going to click on the image. It's going to take you to a video. The name of the video is actually called "What is the Difference Between Civil Cases and Criminal Cases?" So it actually looks like this. So you're going to play the video. It's only about 2 minutes long. After you have watched the video, you are going to go back to your presentation. You're then going to go to your next slide, which is a Venn diagram comparing and contrasting the similarities and differences between civil law and criminal law. I did put in your directions at the note section at the bottom of the slide that there are 3 descriptions that should go under civil law. There are 3 descriptions that should go under criminal law, and there are 2 descriptions that they share in common. Your next slide is to read each example of a criminal case, and you're going to determine whether this case is a criminal case or if it is a civil case. So you're going to drag your red check mark to the correct locations. There should be 4 red check marks in the civil column and 4 red check marks in the criminal column. And last but not least, this is your I do part of your you do part of today's lesson. You are going to create your own civil and criminal case situation and explain why it is civil or criminal. So you're going to create your own situation in both of these boxes here. You're then going to explain why this is a civil case and why this example is a criminal case. Once you have finished that, I have provided the exit ticket access code for you. It is ZF5MN92. It is 5 questions. Please submit it when you are done. If you have any questions about today's lesson, feel free to join me on my office hours from 1 to 2 o'clock today. Thank you.